Welcome to the FTX podcast, Crypto Bahamas edition. It's my pleasure to have here with me today, Kevin O'Leary. Welcome, Kevin.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Great to have you here. And to dive in, I actually want to go back in time. I think many people know you from Shark Tank and several of your other businesses, but I would like to know the story, the origin of where you got into the business world in the first place and why that became a drive for you.
Well, everybody has a different path, particularly into entrepreneurship, because when I talk to entrepreneurs today, there's always one specific moment they remember that changed their course. Mine was when I was in high school. I got a job at an ice cream store called Magoo's Ice Cream Parlor. I'll obviously never forget it, but on the first day of work, I took the job because there was a girl I was really interested in my class working at the shoe store next door, and I wanted to hang out with her at the mall. And so when you're a scooper, I was an ice cream scooper, people want to sample the different flavors and you give them a little stick, but they take their gum out and throw it on the floor. And so at the end of the day, the gum is all over the tile. And so at the end of the day, I noticed that the girl was waiting for me, and the owner said to me, "Listen, you got to scrape the gum off the floor before you leave." And I thought, I can't have her see me scraping gum off the floor right through the glass window. That's off brand, And so I said to her, "No, I can't do that. I'm a scooper, not a scraper." And she said, "No, you're going to do whatever I want. You're my employee. I hired you, and whatever I say, you're going to do. That's how this works." And I said, "No, I'm not going to do that." And she fired me. And it was basically the only day I ever worked for somebody. But it was so humiliating that I realized that there's people, the way you have to look at life is there's people that own the store, and then there's people who scrape the shit off the floor. And you have to decide which one you are. That's sort of the way I looked at it. I'm not dissing being an employee. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to have control of your own destiny, there's only one path. You have to be an entrepreneur, and it's not about the greed of money. It's about the pursuit of personal freedom. Mm-hmm. And now I work harder than ever, but I've always wanted to thank her. I owe her so much for pushing me in that direction with that unique moment in my life. And we went back with a film crew years later to try and find her, but the store had changed, and they eventually bulldozed the mall. And I'd made a comment that because of her, I could afford to bulldoze the mall now. And somebody sent me a brick after they bulldozed it. I thought that was so cool. But that's the moment. Every entrepreneur has that moment in their life.
And from there, though, what was the first entrepreneurial venture? Perhaps not the very first, but one that felt special to you and catapulted you into everything else.
I was always interested in the arts. I wanted to be a guitarist, and my dad said I wasn't good enough, my stepfather, and that I'd starve to death. And then I wanted to be a filmmaker. And I actually did start my own film company called Special Event Television. And we did all the intermissions for the original six hockey teams. Mm-hmm. So Boston, Detroit, Philadelphia, Montreal, Toronto. And we'd run around all week shooting. And I was a sound man, cameraman, editor. I did it all. I find that discipline was very important for later, because when you create something from scratch each week, it's a very chaotic process. You have to dream up a story. You've got to chase down the elements to it. You have to shoot it. You have to edit it. You have to send it up to a satellite by noon on Saturday. We sold that company later because it owned all of its IP. All of that footage we'd shot became very valuable. Footage of Gump Worsley and Bobby Orr and all of these greats in that sport. And that was my first venture. And I took that capital and I started what was called Softkey Software Products that came into the learning company, and we sold that for $4.2 billion. That was the journey of that. And ever since then, I've been sort of an investor, supporter of entrepreneurs. I have a wide range of interests now, but I always go back to those early days. It started at Magoo Ice Cream Parlor, sort of the beginning of the journey. And along the way, my original father died when I was only 7, and my mother remarried, and my stepfather became an official in the United Nations, the ILO. I've lived in Cambodia, Tunisia, Ethiopia, Cyprus, Japan, Germany, 24 months in each place. And I thought that was normal. So I got to meet Haile Selassie. I met Pol Pot in Phnom Penh. These were remarkable experiences that I didn't know at the time would kind of go into my database of learning and understanding. So I'm an investor in Cambodia. It was developed by the French. It's a great real estate market, and I'm not scared to put money there. So it's sort of Now I look at it and say that was an extraordinary opportunity. I just didn't know at the time. But that's how life is. It's very serendipitous.
Absolutely. And at what point did television become a thing for you? And was that a major thing, or was it just one of these investments, so to say, with your time that you were doing that would give you exposure to other potential investments and things of that nature?
I was comfortable behind the camera as a cameraman from my days at special ed television. And I actually worked at the 76 Olympics in volleyball as a production assistant. So I was very familiar with network television. But the whole Shark Tank thing was, I was working with the Discovery Channel in England on a project called Discovery Planet Earth, which was really remarkable. We shot it in 60 countries. There was this concept that you could affect climate change for profit. So we covered Iceland with a reflective sheet to prove that we could stop the melt of the glaciers, all kinds of interesting ideas. And we filmed it. And I got a phone call from Mark Burnett, the guy who's legendary now for reality TV. And he said, look, you need to go to the airport now, get on the plane. There's 2 tickets for you in the limo waiting outside where you are, and fly to Shutters, which is a place in Malibu, and meet me for breakfast. And I said, Mark, I can't do that. I'm already working here. He said, yeah, you have to come. And when a guy like that calls, you got to take the meeting. So I did. I flew there, and he said, I'm producing a show called Shark Tank, and I'm looking for a real asshole, and you're the guy. I said, that's a real compliment. He said, no, don't go changing. We want it. We need we need the asshole, and you're the guy. That was the beginning of a remarkable 14-year journey. I mean, look at what Shark Tank's become. And of course, it's an ensemble cast. We work together, but that's again, this concept that life is serendipitous. You just don't know what's around the corner. And it's provided something unique for me because Shark Tank is a hit in 42 countries. So, and I'll give you an example. Recently, I was on a train between my stepfather lives in Geneva, and I was going to Zurich on the train. And this Austrian couple came over and said, you're the most hated man in Austria. Can we get a picture? We just got married. I said, why would you want my picture if anybody hates me? He said, no, but you're so mean to everybody on Shark Tank. So it affords a certain door opening aspect to it. And it works with government or with CEOs. I mean, the sharks all have this. We can call anybody and get our call returned. And it's great to help entrepreneurs. I can call the CEO of Walmart if I want, because he wants to help entrepreneurs too. So we're associated with entrepreneurship now all around the world.
No, I mean, I watched it in Chile when I was living there as well. So it is all over the place.
It is all over the place. And it really is an interesting platform. And I respect it for what it does. But it's also incredibly interesting work.
Right, because you get to see builders, essentially. Those are the best people to work with.
I never know what's going to walk through the door. And I have such opportunities with these entrepreneurs, because the secret sauce of Shark Tank that nobody really thinks through is it's 100 million eyeballs. The biggest cost in any startup is customer acquisition. 8 out of 10 go bankrupt because they can't ever get their customer acquisition cost below the lifetime value. We get customers for nothing for them. That's the answer.
That's super powerful. And something you touched on about this climate change in a profitable manner, I think touches into some of the work you've been doing in the cryptocurrency and mining space. And I think it'd be a place where I'd love to segue in and hear a little bit about what you've been doing in that space.
So one of my businesses that I spend a lot of time on is indexing. And indexing is creating subsets of the S&P for sovereign wealth or pension plans. So let's say you're a country wealthy with oil. You don't need to invest in more oil stocks. So you say to an indexer like me, give me an index of the S&P X energy, X airlines. And we do that. That's what we do. And there's a big industry doing that. Recently, 3 years ago, most sovereign wealth funds and institutions are not permitted to own Bitcoin, but they want to be exposed to the volatility of Bitcoin. So there was a direct correlation at that time with Bitcoin miners and their stock prices, the public miners. So most indexers just basically indexed the public miners in the US, Marathon, Riot, Hot 8, Hive, and it was a direct correlation. And it was working just great until all of a sudden that Larry Fink ESG letter came out.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, a memorandum from the SEC was issued saying that they're going to demand carbon audits, no different than your financial audits. If you claim carbon neutrality, you have to get an auditor to sign off on that. All of the Bitcoin miners out there are using carbon credits to claim carbon neutrality. And everybody knows that carbon credits are bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no auditor that is going to sign that. Those stocks got killed. And the reason they got killed was every indexer sold all of them.
Right.
Indexing is about knowing where the puck is going. It's the old Gretzky analogy, not where it is right now. And the pressure on those stocks, they no longer trade in correlation with Bitcoin anymore. It's a long answer to your question, because now I'm part of a different movement of companies that are saying, okay, proof of work is going to have to be done with power that is sustainable and renewable. And that would be wind, solar, nuclear, or hydro. Mm-hmm. So one of the largest hydro facilities for Bitcoin mining is being built out right now in northern Norway. We call it the Norway model, where it's 100% excess hydro. And the company built out its own transmission line. So they spent millions building that for the benefit of that community, 3,000 people. The heat off the computers is recaptured and grows hothouse tomatoes. And they built a canning plant so they could store it during the winter. That's the new version of Bitcoin mining. And so my job now is to find senators and governors that have policy in their states and have hydro or nuclear power that are willing to support the Norway model. And those states specifically are Montana, North Dakota, Florida, and Texas, of course. And we're working in all of those jurisdictions. You just saw New York, technically ban Bitcoin mining today. Yeah. They did that vote. Now, it's not law yet. It's got to go through the Senate, but what a waste. They have excess power. They don't understand Bitcoin. It's a political knee-jerk reaction. But we had a project in New York, and we're just taking that capital and those jobs, and we're getting out of there, like everybody else will. Sometimes governments do bad things. They don't know what they're doing. It's sad to see that happen in technology, because other states will compete with them and they will lose all those jobs.
What does an ideal state look like for the success energy mining?
It has one of two attributes. It's got renewable source, which would either be wind, solar, which is intermittent. Wind and solar is intermittent. Right. So it's good for Bitcoin mining, but not good for data centers. Data centers have to be up 24 hours a day. And the other attribute they would have is pro-business policy. But there is one unique attribute, unique almost in the world, and that is North Dakota with their salt caves. So they have a huge amount of subterranean storage capability of carbon. So they have, every time you extract a fracking barrel of oil, it moves towards more gas in it. The last barrel of oil that comes out of a spent fracking field is gas. It's not oil. So the ratio of gas keeps going up. You have to flare it. Well, why waste that energy? If you had a way to flare it, create electricity, but take the carbon, extract it, and pump it underground, which they can do. They're the most advanced state in the union doing this. They've advanced carbon sequestration so far ahead of everybody else. I went to meet there with leadership, the governor and the senator together, and I brought the whole team, including the guys from Norway, with me. We spent a couple of days there, and I'm 100% committed to North Dakota. I mean, that place is going to change the perception of hydrocarbons.
I think that really stands out to me with this kind of things is it brings empowerment to areas that have been sort of forgotten or there hasn't been that much development. And now with Bitcoin mining and other technologies like this, there's a resurgence in these places. Is that something that matters, or is it just where the ideal scenario is?
It does matter, but it takes leadership. Yeah. It takes leadership at the state level. It takes vision and leadership and encouragement of policy. And you can see the difference between those advanced pro-business states. It's not just around political, partisanship. It's about individual governors and senators who ran businesses once that actually understand payroll, and they understand how important it is to attract capital. Now, I'm working with investors in the United Arab Emirates for two reasons. One, they're also very advanced in their thinking on carbon neutrality, but they have something else no other country has, including us, access to semiconductors. With great foresight decades ago, they took on equity positions in semiconductor manufacturing. So when Bit Zero goes to a place like North Dakota, not only can they bring capital, unlimited capital, they have unlimited semiconductors. So they're able to build. We got the machines, the stacks for Norway, not in 2 years. We got it in 14 days. So we're able to do that now. And so I'm very much around this initiative, and I want to support other companies that are doing the same thing. But right now, the most advanced that I can find is Bit Zero. There's nobody else that they've proven the model in Norway. It's there and it's running and it's working with the community. So we're able to take the Norwegian team and bring them to any state and say, here's how it works. Here's the footprint of how this works. And that's very, very motivating to see something that's already been proven.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the listeners, the backlogs on miners are ridiculous. So the fact that they got it in 14 days is very, very, very impactful.
It's unprecedented.
That's impressive. I'd like to take a step back and ask you, what brought you into the cryptocurrency blockchain space? What about it captured your imagination when you first saw it? And what was the story of what made you see it in the first place?
It's a use case. Let me walk you through my thinking on it. When you're an indexer, you're constantly creating indices in multiple markets. So let's take Europe. So we have an index that is 50 European stocks that is very popular. And so what we try and do is find the best balance sheets. And Europe is basically made up of Switzerland, so the Swiss franc, Europe itself, Germany and France, so that's the euro as a currency, and then the London Stock Exchange, which is in British pounds. Now, let's say you're putting out $100 million index, just for start. You seed an index with $100 million. I have to take the $100 million US dollars, allocate it into 3 different currencies, go through an FX exchange where I get clipped basis points, no value whatsoever, zero value, buy the stocks on the native exchanges, manage their positions. Usually a mandate like that is no more than 5% in any one stock. So if it doubles in price, you got to sell half of it. Go back from that, Swiss franc back into US dollars, get clipped again, no value whatsoever. I mean, it is such a waste of capital for everybody. It's useless friction. Now think ahead to crypto. Let's just talk about payment systems. Let's just talk USDC, just one. There's many opportunities to do stablecoins, but if we could get agreement amongst regulators, let's say the Toomey bill, which I'm proud to be involved with, and the Haggerty bill, same thing, just focus on stablecoins, just one thing, because the largest market on earth is currency trading. Yeah. It's trillions of dollars and it's incredibly inefficient. So their proposal is very simple. Okay, let's audit these stablecoins every 30 days, agree to an audit, and also agree that any asset that's backing the coin is no more than 12 months in duration. Very simple mandate. I get it. Everybody gets it. Now, the risk here is if one coin agrees to under that mandate and gets licensed, the others, it's going to be one of these situations. I won't mention any names, but the king may not have any clothes.
Right.
And that's going to be ugly. However, if we can get the legislation through, I could potentially only use one payment system for all of the stocks that I'm buying in all these different currencies. And all of a sudden, the efficiency of that, the billions in savings, it's at our fingertips. I know with certainty, and I'll make a statement now, and I've said it before, that within a decade, crypto and blockchain technology will be the 12th sector of the S&P. Right now, there's 11 sectors. It will become the 12th. The only decision any of us as investors have to make now is how much should I allocate to crypto now, and how should I deploy it? How much diversification should I have? So in my head, the big event is going to be policy on crypto. It will open the floodgates to capital from pension and sovereign, which we don't have. People talk about Bitcoin, 800 billion. That's nothing. That's nothing in financial services. It's not even a pimple. It's nothing. Nobody owns it. I mean, yes, there's some high net worth individuals, some hedge funds, and a few retail investors, but Bitcoin is a nothing burger in financial services. However, the potential would be that we do provide regulation, and all of a sudden in a sovereign fund where they might put 1% allocation, but that sovereign fund is $100 billion. That's a small sovereign fund. So I'm investing ahead of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm making the assumption that if I'm buying in, at 35 to 40,000, that I'll see this at 150, 250,000 one day when it gets allocated and indexed. Because if an indexer says I'm putting 1% allocation, if the coin drops 20%, which is very volatile, they buy back up to 1%.
Yeah.
So you have a bid. They're the bid. They're the market all the time. 24/7, they're the market. We don't have that right now. So at a conference like this, it's very important to note who makes up the population of attendees. And here, I can point to institutions that I index for that are walking around with baseball bats on or hats on because they don't want to be seen, but they're here to learn, and government officials from multiple countries.
Mm-hmm.
So this tells you the tone is towards policy. And that's why there's a big buzz out there.
I have a personal question for you. I mean, you've done very well. You've sold this business, as you said, for $4.3 billion. But now you're still working very actively in the cryptocurrency space. We've gotten on a few calls. I know you're working on a lot of interesting projects. Where's that drive coming from? What keeps you going? What makes you want to keep getting up every day and working on this?
Well, I think the whole idea of entrepreneurship is to when I teach, I just spent 2 days at Harvard teaching. I really enjoy that with the graduating cohorts in the MBA program, the first year and the second years. And I say to them, look, this is not a life for all of you, but it's a life for a third of you, because that's what the stats say. A third of them are start companies. And you're not doing it for the greed of money. You're doing it for the pursuit of personal freedom, because when you are successful, you get to spend your hours, your awake hours, doing things that you want to do. And I'm at that place, and I've been at that place for a long time now. So I enjoy what I do. I'm here because I want to be here, and I can afford to be here. And so I don't need more money. I obviously want to keep what I've got, but I'm really interested in the stuff I'm working on. I want to be at the cutting edge of the 11th sector, turning to the 12th sector of the S&P. I mean, this is a big passion for me now, and I'm dealing with governments all around the world. I recently became an Emirati so that I could work in the UAE on financial services and be able to license exchanges there. Mm-hmm. So I love this stuff. I mean, this is just, what else am I going to be doing?
Yeah, no, I'm exactly on the same page a lot. But I have two more questions for you, Kevin. The first one being, what would be some advice you could give to traditional entrepreneurs or people from traditional of the 11 sectors that want to join crypto?
So I think the best strategy right now is not to bet the farm on a token or a coin. I like the analogy from the gold rush way back hundreds of years ago, when you would have done better owning the picks and shovels and the jeans that people wore than to try and pick a hole in the ground and mine it. So I'm looking for opportunities. I'm a shareholder in FTX. I have to disclose that. I'm also a paid spokesperson for Sam. Happy to do that. But I also find companies like Immutable Holdings that's doing NFT.com. That's infrastructure. Another one called WonderFi that's buying all the regulated exchanges to service banks, like in countries like Canada. BitZero, we talked about. It's a private company, but I'm 100% behind that for sustainable mining and working with them in all these different state and different countries. It's a very collaborative way of working. And a good example is Ryan, FTX's CEO. He introduced me to the government in Georgia. Yeah. And I'm way down the rabbit hole in Georgia now, buying assets in their country, even though it's right beside Russia. But I have an opinion about that. I think Russians are pretty busy right now in the Ukraine and not doing so well. So I think at the end of the day, I'm not that worried about Georgia because it's a very entrepreneurial place. And I don't think it's of much interest to them. Mm-hmm. So I'm willing to deploy capital there. The point is, I wouldn't have known about it unless, this collaboration existed with other CEOs that are working on this stuff. I'm intrigued. I think infrastructure is the play. Owning a piece of exchanges, you're agnostic to price of coin. Doesn't matter. It goes up or down. You still get paid. So that is what I'm sort of focusing on now. And I do have a big portfolio of 32 other tokens and positions: Polygon, Solana, HBAR, Helium, Avalanche, like all this stuff. Yeah. It's all software. There's no coin. It's just software. So I'm investing in software developers.
The infrastructure. And then my last question for you would be, What's a life lesson or habit that you've learned or developed that has allowed you to live a better life?
That's a great question. I would say it's this, and I, for some interesting reason, if I look over the last 20 years as an investor, 75% of my returns have come from companies that were run by women,
Mm.
which is really interesting. And so I tend to be biased towards investing in women. And one of them gave me some advice a few years ago that I think everybody should think about. Most people spend 2/3 of their day talking and 1/3 listening. Reverse that. Shut up and listen. And I tried that. One of my great women CEOs told me that. She said, "You listening gives you information, empowers you, and helps you make better decisions." And she's right. I've turned that around now. I listen 2/3 of the day. I often say nothing, and I learn, and then it helps me make a better decision as an investor. That in itself is a great life lesson.
Thank you, Kevin. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you. It was great. Take care.